Hi everyone, Bear from Bear Reads Books. Welcome back to my channel and a book haul. Yes. I went on a whim. I went to the second-hand bookstore today, and there's a few in town. There's a few that I don't like. They never seem to have anything, and then there's one that I consistently go to, and I generally find one, maybe two things. But I went today, and there was a reasonable size haul. reasonable amount of stuff that I thought, yes, I want that, or yes, I've got that on ebook and I'd prefer to have it on a physical book. So I've picked up five books, and on top of that there's a couple that I've collected from the library as well. So I thought I'd go through them. We'll call the library books book haul books. So let's go with the library ones first, shall we? Because technically I haven't bought them. So the one I'm reading right now, I started reading it. You know, when you get stuff from the library, you've kind of got to make a start immediately because you know you've got to give it back pretty soon. So you've got a month, and if anyone else wants it, then you can't renew it. So you've got to kind of make sure you can read both of them within the month just in case someone else decides they want it. So the first one is called The Swan Book by Alexis Wright. This won all sorts of awards. Way back when, 2013 maybe, I want to say. Oh, let's check because that's terrible. 2013. So 2013, it won all sorts of awards. It's very highly regarded. An Australian book. It is a future setting where climate change has ruined the world and Australia has changed forever, and there's all sorts of conflicts going on in the world. It's been, and I had honestly never heard about it until just a couple of weeks ago, where it popped up in a university lecture I was doing as an example of something that I really wanted to read, and it piqued my interest. Honestly, never heard of it. But remember, if you've heard me do videos before, there was this long period where I just didn't read much at all, and probably 2009 was in there somewhere where I just wasn't doing much reading. So Alexis Wright, The Swan Book. It says, is set in the future with Aboriginals still living under the intervention in the north in an environment fundamentally altered by climate change. It follows the life of a mute young woman called Oblivia, the victim of gang rape by petrol-sniffing youths from the displaced community where she lives in a hulk in a swamp filled with rusting boats and thousands of black swans, to her marriage to Warren Finch, the first Aboriginal President of Australia, and her elevation to the position of First Lady, confined to a tower in a flooded and lawless southern city. Sounds thoroughly strange. Especially if you're not from Australia, you probably don't even know what half of those words mean. The Swan Book by Alexis Wright. The second one I've mentioned on this channel before. I've had trouble finding it in bookshops all over the place. Decided to look for it in the library, and I have looked for it in the library before. It didn't exist. Now it did, so I got it from the library. Blueberries by Alina Savage. This was in the short list / long list for the Stella Prize, which I've done videos about before, and this was one of the ones that I said in the non-fiction section that I wanted to read, but haven't been able to find a copy. Well, I found a copy. It's a series of essays that says Blueberries could be described as a collection of essays, the closest term available for a book that resists classification, a blend of personal essay, polemic, prose poetry, true crime journalism, and confession that considers a fragmented life, reflecting on what it means to be a woman, a body, and an artist. Blueberries. All sorts of people have done reviews of this and have said amazing things about it. So, two books from the library. Class them in the section of a book haul. We'll class it as a book haul. Technically, sure, why not? And then I bought 5 books, which was really exciting. Let's start with this little fellow. Because I've just mentioned the Stella Prize. The winner of the Stella Prize this year was this person, Evie Wild, for her book The Bass Rock, which won the Stella Prize for a book by an Australian woman, but not set in Australia. In fact, set in the north of Scotland, so the northeast coast of Scotland. And this is the book, her previous book, called All the Birds Singing, which was a Miles Franklin Literary Award winner in its own right. Again, in that same period that I probably wasn't reading, 2013. Never heard of it. Never heard of Evie Wyld. Never heard of this book. It's like I have this blank patch in my life. I don't know, was I a spy? No. I don't know what was going on in 2013. I just maybe never read a thing. I don't know. All the Birds Sing. All the Birds Singing by Evie Wyld. It says Jake White is the sole resident of an old farmhouse on an unnamed island, a place of ceaseless rains and battering winds. It's just her untamed companion dog, and a flock of sheep, which is how she wanted it to be. But something is coming for the sheep. Every few nights one is picked off and left in rags. It could be anything. There are foxes in the woods, a strange boy and a strange man, rumours of an obscure, formidable beast, and there is Jake's unknown past as well, perhaps breaking into the present. A story hidden thousands of miles away and years ago in a landscape of different colour and sound. A story held in the scars that stripe her back. Oh wow, that sounds really good. All the Birds Singing by Evie Wyld. I didn't even read that in the shop. That sounds awesome. Also another Australian book, probably by an author you've not heard of before, called Kyle Perry. The book is called The Bluffs. It is in this same vein of everything that I've kept raving about for the last 18 months, and that is this resurgence in Aussie crime fiction. And this is the same, or part of the same genre, not the same. And it's been really well received. And I had this on audiobook, and I just never got to it. And I thought, if I buy the physical book for a grand total of $4, if I buy the physical book from a second-hand bookshop, maybe I'm more likely to read it. At the bottom of the world there is an island. It is a land of rugged wilderness, of ice and snow and blistering heat, of the oldest trees on earth. They say tigers still roam there. They say other things roam too. The Bluffs, Kyle Perry. Also Australian. Everything was almost everything was Australian today. A few people spoke about this in Aussie April. Some liked it, some didn't. I know it's not a large volume, but I think Murray Bale writes very descriptively, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to like this or not. It's Eucalyptus by Murray Bale. I read a little bit of Murray Bale, who's written things like poetry in the past and short stories, and I've read some of his short stories and poetry, and they are quite complex little things. So I'm interested to see where this takes me. Eucalyptus by Murray Bale. There was once a man on a property outside a one-horse town in New South Wales who couldn't come to a decision about his daughter. He then made an unexpected decision. Incredible. For a while, people talked and dreamed about little else. Doesn't tell me too much. It's pretty vague. That's super vague. And it's signed on. I love it when I go to the second-hand bookstore and books are signed on the inside. Someone's given this book as a gift, and the person that's received as a gift has got and just sent it to the second-hand bookstore. To our wonderful mum on Mother's Day, love Ronna and Tony. So two children have bought their mum one book. Cheap ass Ronna and Tony. Poor mum. To our wonderful mum, who only deserves a cheap-ass book for her birthday. Pick up your act, Ronna and Tony. And the last of the Australian ones picked up at the second-hand bookstore this morning. A Room Made of Leaves by Kate Grenville, still in its hardcover. And for the grand total of $5, that is a super bargain. Kate Grenville is an Australian writer of great renown, and this book says, what if Elizabeth MacArthur, wife of the notorious John MacArthur, wool baron in the earliest days of Sydney, had written a shockingly frank secret memoir? And what if novelist Kate Grenville had miraculously found and published it? That's the starting point for A Room Made of Leaves, a playful dance of possibilities between the real and the invented. Sounds delightful. A Room Made of Leaves. And finally, the only non-Australian book on the list at all. Let me just check. Yes, it is the only non-Australian book on the list. It's Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. It is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. And I've heard great things about this one. I think it was on the BookTube Prize last year. Didn't get through to the finals, but did well. And I think, a girl comes of age against the knife. So begins the story of Betty Carpenter. Born in a bathtub in 1954 to a Cherokee father and white mother, Betty inhabits a world of poverty and violence. But despite the hardship she faces, Betty is resilient. Her fierce love for her sisters and her father's brilliant stories are kindling for the fire of her own imagination. And in the face of all she bears witness to, Betty discovers an escape in the redemptive power of words. Again, it sounds fantastic. So there is 4, 5, 6, 7 books, 5 of which were purchased this morning from a second-hand bookstore. 2 came from the library, and they're a bunch of awesome. Here's my first book haul in a very, very long time. My book purchasing in the recent past has been one book at a time. Oh, I forgot, actually. I bought some books yesterday. I'll be right back. I'm back. I completely forgot that the last time I went to town, not today to the second-hand bookstore, but I went to an actual bookstore and I did buy 3 brand new books. Two fiction, 1 non-fiction. One is called Now That I See You by Emma Batchelor, which I've been hearing wonderful things about. And it is an Australian novelist, so another Australian to add to the list that I forgot. In those first moments, that admission felt precious to me. It was something that I alone had been deemed worthy enough to carry, and I was grateful. I was grateful to finally know, but I still couldn't speak. Something was wrong. She knew it, but she was entirely unprepared for what he would tell her. Viewed through the lens of a relationship breakdown after one partner discloses to the other they are transgender, this auto-fiction spans 18 months from the moments of first discovery through the eventual disintegration of their partnership to the new beginnings of independence via diaries and letters. Love story / conflict. It's got everything I like. Non-fiction called Heartsick, which never heard of it before, showed up on the shelves, read the back, thought super interesting concept. 3 stories about love and loss and what happens in between. So it's about the physical nature of loss and grief, whether that be loss of a partner, loss of, not necessarily through death, but a broken heart, for instance. Long form journalism at its best. And it does say Claire has returned from London to the dust and the familiarity of her childhood home, only to realise something is wrong with her partner, Maggie. Patrick is a lonely uni student until he meets Caitlin, but does she feel as connected as he does? And Anna is happily married with 3 children, then one night she falls in love with someone else. So there's 3 stories here that get examined and tied together to see what it is about heartbreak and loss, and we can learn from these 3 stories. Sounds great. And finally, too much fanfare, and I've been waiting for this for so long, is Edward Rutherford China. Edward Rutherford's China. And this is not for everybody. This is really easy to read, but it's that immersive historical drama that you can just immerse yourself in and just fall into and for weeks and just live in it. It's wonderful. I've read all of Edward Rutherford's books, like Sarum, London, Rusker, Dublin, Paris. There's a whole bunch more as well that I can't recall. And this was promised to us before the pandemic. It was on the pre-release list for I think March or even September of 2019, and then it got pushed into early 2020, I think March of 2020. And then when the pandemic hit, it disappeared. And no one it just wasn't on any forward radar. And then out of nowhere, seemingly, it's just popped up into bookshelves this week. And just like other Edward Rutherford books, if you've ever read any of them, they are very big, detailed family and countrywide dramas, tying together multiple family trees across 800 plus pages, and this one is about 800 pages. I can't wait. It's a big read, and I know I don't usually finish books that I've just bought, but this is Edward Rutherford. You know, if it was something else like Donna Tartt, I'd be the same, because I love her writing. Edward Rutherford, I love the stories that he creates about different parts of the world. They're so interesting. So I think I'm going to be diving into this sooner rather than later. And on top of that, my wife reads them as well, so we'll both be vying for control of this book. That is Edward Rutherford's China. And that is it. I know I said that was it 5 minutes ago, but now that is actually it. So that's 10 books. So 8 of them are purchased. I didn't realise I'd spent so much money. I'm going to be in trouble. It's 8 books purchased, 2 from the library. I would get cracking. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, wherever you may be, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.